Today we're going to talk about reading out loud to your child. Reading out loud to your children is one of the best gifts you can give them. Reading aloud allows them to be exposed to stories that they wouldn't read otherwise. So you generally want to read a level above where they're at, their skill level, and so you can give them stories that they wouldn't read on their own. It also helps them to hear what good reading sounds like, and then they adopt that into their minds when they read. They can hear punctuation and flow, and those are things that you don't pick up when you read to yourself. It shows them the importance of reading, especially when you share a story that is powerful. Reading to your child builds a memory, and humans crave shared experience, and a shared story is a powerful bond. Now, not all books are created equal. My kids have a habit of picking out books like these. They're okay for, being able to read on their own, but this is not real literature. This is like cotton candy of the book world. And I want them to read nutritional books. So here's how I build reading aloud into our day. Sometimes we sit down on the couch and just read for fun. Like if they ever ask me if I will read to them, it's always yes, unless I'm making dinner. But I always offer to read to them before bed. I use that as a carrot to get them to get ready for bed quickly. And I allow them to pick the books. But if they pick too many of these cotton candy books, I start making the selections from the library. And the worst ones of these are those Lego books. They have no plot. So then I start trying to read to them as mundane and monotone as I can. But the kids think that that's just funny. So, and once they can read picture books, I start trying to edge them into chapter books. So when my kids were in elementary school, I felt like I ought to start reading chapter books to them because that's what my teachers did. But because they're not in the classroom, they don't have that same kind of pressure. And so my kids just hated it. So I finally gave up reading chapter books for a while and just read picture books. So the next time I found chapter books with pictures or the illustrated classics. And so they finally come around. And while they still really enjoy pictures, they've learned to live without them. And I like to pull out a book whenever we're just sitting around waiting. So sometimes after lunch, or snack time if I don't have other things that I need to cover. Sometimes we just keep a special book for dinner because Dad likes to hear the stories too. Right now we're currently reading The Swiss Family Robinson at dinner. And I like to do voices for all the characters, but that's not necessary. Just hearing a good story out loud is a great investment with your family. One of my homeschool friends, she has a reading disability, and so she uses audiobooks in the same way. So here's some good illustrated classics. If you come across a classic, you can a lot of times find an illustrated version of it. So this one is nice because it's a slight adaptation from the original story, and it has a few pictures, but not as many, probably one per chapter. Or you can find ones like this. This one would be for younger kids, and it's like an abridged version. So the language isn't as strong, which that's one of the great things about Mark Twain was he was a genius at different dialects. But the nice thing about these ones is that you can read it really fast, and for every page of text, there's a picture. So this can be really motivating for kids. Otherwise, you can usually find chapter books that come with some pictures in it. This is the Cricket in Times Square, and it's got a few pictures, but not as many. Or some of the older books like Mrs. Piggle Wiggle has just a few. Sometimes you'll find these that only have, half a picture. But sometimes this will be enough to keep them motivated. So here's some good chapter books with pictures. Basil of Baker Street. These were super quick and heavily pictured, and they were pretty funny. Anything by Roald Dahl. And those are nice because you can watch the movie afterwards, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, The Fantastic Mr. Fox. The Chronicles of Narnia are a great story. They're kind of confusing if you've never, basically you have to kind of explain that story to them, especially depending on whether you're going to start with number 1 or number 3, because it was originally you're supposed to read the third one first, but now people read the first one first. And anyway, Dr. Dolittle. It's a bit older, but we found a great illustrated classic one from the library, and they had updated it because I think that it used to be a little bit racist, and they had changed the story to where it was better. The Wind in the Willows, we really liked that one. It was kind of slow, but we found one with beautiful pictures. And it took a while for my 8-year-old to come around, but then she loved it. Peter Pan, The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland. We also read Alice Through the Looking Glass. Charlotte's Web, Paddington Bear stories, Cat Wings, any of the Little House on the Prairies. And we've read a bunch of these different abridged classics. We read A Kid in King Arthur's Court, Tom Sawyer, Treasure Island, Around the World in 80 Days. And it's nice because then you can expose your kids to like these really great classics without having to spend a lot of time doing it. And these ones weren't picture books, but they were still a great read. The Sign of the Beaver, that one was really good. We were really surprised. I hadn't read it ahead, and a lot of times like the older books about Native Americans can be offensive, but this one held up great. I'd never read it before. I actually cried. The book, The Island of the Blue Dolphin, I would say that's older middle school. Pippi Longstocking books. Animorphs are a little bit more of a series, but it's still a pretty good story. Wayside School is Falling Down. Those ones are really funny, but you kind of have to have older kids in order for them to get the jokes in that. We've read Anne of Green Gables. Those ones are really pretty, and there's that nice Netflix TV version of that now, or the older Anne of Green Gables movies. Mr. Popper's Penguins, and then of course Harry Potter. But I usually like to save Harry Potter until they're older. So I've used books that have been made into movies as another way to get them to sit through like a longer book. And it provides a good way to compare, like, how did they change the story? Which did you like better and why? So there you have it. It's not a big deal.